bother to stress about whether your chickens will survive all winter long. But there's 10 golden rules you must follow in order to keep your chickens cozy. Chickens are generally more cold hardy, even so, than to heat, due to their feathers underneath their nice feathers, which is known as their downy feathers. It may sound familiar. Downy feathers are the feathers that birds have under their waterproof feathers. These feathers keep the air and heat in between each other that the chicken generate. You may have seen a chicken before fluffing or puffing up their feathers and adapting to the cold. Moldy chickens cannot stay out in the cold temperatures because they don't have their downy feathers. About 98% of us should already know that heating your coop using a heat lamp is dangerous. There's litter on the ground and there's particles floating in the air of the coop, which to me sounds like a big fire hazard. And there's been many articles published online about how dangerous these heat lamps could be. These accidents could have happened due to improper installation of the heat lamp, or other times it happened by accident. In fact, truth be told, a few years back, one of our neighbors had a barn and was keeping some cattle, horses, and other animals along with chickens. During the winter, their heat lamp got knocked over by an animal, and it started a fire and burnt down their entire barn, sadly to say.
Which is why heat lamps are dangerous, right, Tweaker? Right?
Well, the neighbors got their community together and in 40 days, they rebuilt their barn. And now they keep new animals in their barn. This day, I don't really know whether they heat their barn still using a heat lamp, but if I was them, I wouldn't. Alternative heating source that I would recommend if you choose to heat your coop is the Sweeter heater because it's a radiant heater. It doesn't require any bulb, and its heat is minimal, like warm to the touch. It's just slightly above warm. It's not very hot. Knowing the risk, if you still decide to go with heating your coop, which chickens don't need necessarily, that's totally up to you. But will they be a little happier with a little extra heat? I think they would too. Also, in the case of a power outage, what are you going to do when you don't have access to the main power supplies? Sometimes these outages can hit in the middle of night, and then you don't know until morning. And by then, these birds would have been exposed to the extreme colds if it got really cold at night, and they could die within a few hours due to hypothermia. I know, it's the #1 rule, having a draft-free coop. That's what everybody talks about, so I won't dwell too much on this matter. So, what is draft? Draft is simply wind that blow at the roosting level or below them. Airflow should be allowed to circulate above them slowly to allow ammonia and moisture out of the coop. This window here would count as draft, which is why we'll cut a piece of plastic and just push it in between here to block off the wind. And up here, this side where the chickens aren't sleeping, we have it open for ventilation, and we have this side blocked off so don't get on them. Inside the coop, there's an extra window here. During the summertime, we roll this curtain up and place it up on the ledger here to allow airflow to circulate. But during winter, this remains cold as it's very cold. Oh, and plus, during the summer, the chickens look out the window and they could see some nice scenery. Really nice window. Up here in Canada, we have northwestern wind, which is why we have curtains that we could close on those windy nights. And then we'll open it up during the day for ventilation. This window, although the chickens are high up and the wind is hitting them, doesn't count as draft. And there are a few reasons why. #1 is that chickens will settle down on the roost during the nighttime, so they'll only be about maybe here, which is far from the window. Second reason why it doesn't count as draft is because we have this roof overhanging on the outside. And the third reason why this window don't count as draft is because we have a curtain. Now there's no draft on the chickens. Roosting bars. I haven't heard too many people mention this point, but I believe it's one of the most important. Why? Contrary to popular belief, that chicken will roost on a roosting bar with their foot wrapped around the bar. Chickens will actually settle down on the roosting bar and cover their feet using their downy feathers to keep the feet warm because their feet don't have feathers. Knowing that statement is true, it's important to have a 3 to 4 inch wide roosting bar. Here we have about a 5 to 6. It's about 5.5 inches wide. For chicken keepers like myself, moisture is one of the greatest enemies for keeping chickens during winter. A humid or moist air will cause your chickens to become colder and increase the risk of frostbite on their combs and wattle during winter. What precautions we take to reduce frostbite? Well, we only bring water into the coop during the day, and we use a dog bowl like the one here. I almost forgot to mention the water stand in the background. We built the watering stand because our chickens kept knocking over their water bowl. Using the water stand, 0 water bowls have spilled, which greatly helps reduce moisture in the coop during winter, as it's like less chance of it tipping over. Some water. Water chickens. The next point I'd like to mention is about choosing cold, hardy breeds. Now, this video is not about the best breeds you should choose for your climate or the most cold, hardiest breeds ever, so I'll just go over the few characteristics of cold, hardy chicken breeds. Cold, hardy breeds are breeds that are more tolerant to the cold and have either pea comb, rose comb, or cushion's comb, as well as small wattle. The chickens we have are black Australorp chickens. With almost all breeds, roosters usually tend to have a bigger comb and wattle than the hens do. Black Australorp chickens have black feathers, which mean they could absorb heat through their feathers during those warm winter days when the sun is shining. There are many people out there on the internet who have complained about issues with their coop bedding, but it doesn't have to be that way. Using the deep littered method, you put down 12 to 18 inches worth of material over the course of time, and it will decompose with the green matter, which is their poo, and create rich, good compost. It is said to produce some heat, which I think in May and summer, but for us up here in northern climates, it seems to not be generating much heat, because the high nitrogen matter freezes during the winter. If you know how to get your deep litter generate heat during winter, please let us know in the comments so everyone can learn. But even so, if it doesn't generate much heat during the winter, it sure provide a good thick layer of insulation for their feet. If your chickens aren't turning the bedding, you may have to turn it every once in a while. Our chickens are pretty much lazy, except for these guys. They're the young new birds. Wind shall bring the harshest breeze and coldest temperatures during the winter months, which is why it's important to provide windbreaks for your chickens in your coop and in your run during the winter months. Inside the coop, we have plastic on almost every window to block off any draft that may come in through the window. We also have bubble foil on every wall of the coop. We also have bubble foil in our nest boxes to help insulate any eggs from freezing. This year, our chickens really seem to like the bubble foil on the inside of the coop because they stay inside the coop until it's warm enough to come out in the day. We also have spear-mounted roofing, which we use to stick in the snow and place around the coop on cold days, so that underneath the coop will remain draft-free and warm. Snow should not be allowed to accumulate in your chicken run because if chickens given a choice, they will prefer a cleared run. We have a very large run, which would be very costly to make it covered, which is why we'll just shovel the snow during winter and pile it up on northern and western fences of a run. Plus, it'll also act as a windbreak for the chickens. And you know, it only takes a few extra minutes. During winter, when the ground has snow, we'll add leaves on the ground to keep their feet warmer. Some people choose to use hay or straw, but we use leaves because they're free and you could gather them during the fall. When the snow begins to melt, you could gather the leaves using a leaf rake, and then at nights we'll cover it using this. And we do this to ensure we'll have leaves in case it ever snows again. Also, it'll begin to decompose, and later in the year you'll have great compost that is usable and good for your garden. Our compost managed to reach up to 20 degrees Celsius, even with snow still on the ground. Chickens will prefer a dry place outside the shelter than on wet snow. Covered runs and raised coop designs allow chickens to go outside on those warmer winter days and allows them to breathe fresh air, which help keep their health in good condition. You may also want to give your chickens a slightly higher protein feed during the winter months with some good carbs to compensate for the heat loss during winter. Corn is also a great source of carbs for chickens. During the day, we'll also bring out kitchen scraps for the chickens to eat as an extra source of food. So we bought a feeder here, and then what we have is some bungee cord, and it hooks onto the feeder. and it's hooked up to the ceiling here where we have a hook. And we used multiple bungee cord to try to distribute the weight between it. That way it's not too heavy. And then we fill it up with feed that they can access anytime they want. In the event of an extreme weather forecast, you could bring chickens inside your house, and once the harsh weather passes, you can't just throw your chickens back outside into the winter cold. Inside your basement will be much warmer than the outside temperature. If you have a sunroom as an option and it's not heated, you could bring them in there and let them adapt to the cold, and then they'll be okay to bring outside. If your chickens don't get the chance to adapt to the cold, they could get hypothermia and die within a few hours. We never had to bring our chickens inside during our -40 temperatures, and they did just fine. Right, Martin Rooster? He's also called Martin Rooster King. I just want to give you options so you can make a choice that will satisfy your concerns and worries about keeping chickens. Last year when we built our chicken coop, our neighbors were very down keeping chickens through winter. They had thought that we were going to have icicle chickens in the middle of winter. But we did our research online and we learned that you can keep chickens through the winter unheated in -40. Earlier this year, our neighbors figured out that choosing a cold hardy breed can survive through winter. This year they had said they're going to keep chickens through winter. But a year before they told us that they killed their chickens before winter comes for meat. They had probably learned a thing or two from a neighbor. And none of our chickens died due to the cold. But in those temperatures, predators are still around, such as coyote, lynx, and wolves. And they're looking for your chicken. Which is why you should watch this video over here to learn how to keep your chickens safe from predators during day and night.